Hi everyone, it's Melissa, your plantita abogada here at Tasteful Nodes, coming to you today from my greenhouse. Yes, so today's episode is going to be a Rhaphidophora collection episode, and I'm quite excited to share these with you. I have 14 different kinds of Rhaphidophoras in my collection, and I can't wait to share them. So let me go ahead and get my disclaimers out of the way. 1. KKB tayo, kanya-kanyang bayad, meaning for our Westerner friends, we each pay our own way. If there's anything that remotely interests you here, please don't spend your rent money. Although someone in the comment section for one of my past videos actually said that they did. So let's not do that. Let's not do that. I'm not paying any plant child support. Okay, great. Number 2, I'm not an expert in this field and I shouldn't be quoted as one. For any academic resource use, I'll go ahead and put the sources of the factual information that I get at the bottom of the screen. And I'll also include it in the description box down below. Which leads me to my 3rd disclaimer. Do get a second opinion on the information that I share. Anything that is not factual will be based on my personal observations and my experiences, and we likely have very different growing conditions, unless you're actually located in Tarlac, Philippines, right? So find out who the experts are in your area. They could tell you what growing conditions are in your area, what special materials you need, how much these things cost in your area. Yeah, so experts in your area are a good source of secondary information to any information that I provide. So please, please, please do your research and get those second opinions, okay? Now that we've got that out of the way, we're going over 14 different kinds of Rhaphidophoras today. I'll go ahead and get it started with, let's go ahead and get it started with this guy. Definitely my favorite right now. This, my friends, let's carry him, is a Rhaphidophora Decursiva. Hey, it's this beautiful guy right here with these gorgeous curvy leaves. I mean, almost all Rhaphidophoras have these gorgeous curvy leaves, but this guy is just massive. I mean, yeah, see, I'm a pretty big girl, and this guy's huge. And he is not at his full adult size just yet. The Decursivas, according to my notes that I've taken, are actually endemic to China, the Indian subcontinent, Indonesia. Yeah, sadly they're not one of ours here in the Philippines, but man, such a looker. Definitely worth finding. The next guy that I do have on the list would be, it's the Rhaphidophora foraminifera. There you go. So I hope I got that correct. And that would be this guy right here. So the foraminifera, when it's finally matured, has these gorgeous, gorgeous fenestrations. I mean, they're not complete fenestrations that rip all the way through the leaf to the end of the leaf, but they just dot the center of the midrib, or right on the sides of the midrib. Fantastic, gorgeous, beautiful plant. The Rhaphidophora foraminifera is actually a Malaysian Rhaphidophora. Definitely something that is worth getting into any collection, and definitely something that I need to start getting a pull for, because these leaves are getting bigger, and I can imagine this is another climber just like any of these other Rhaphidophoras. Now, next here I have the Rhaphidophora perkinsiae. But this is not just any Rhaphidophora perkinsiae. This native of the Philippines, right here, is actually a variegated Rhaphidophora perkinsiae. So, found this one from a friend. Yeah, so excited to see it. I don't have the non-variegated form just yet, but this Philippine native is striking. I can't wait to see these leaves get even bigger as it climbs. This mottled variegation, kind of similar to that of Thai constellation, Monstera Thai constellation, if you're familiar. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Next up on my list is the Rhaphidophora hayi. Hayi. This guy is a native of Australia and New Guinea, and I believe it's this guy right here. This was sold to me, this blue little guy right here, was sold to me as a Rhaphidophora sp, meaning they didn't know what it was, that all that it was is that it was a Rhaphidophora species. But if you look at the shape, the leaf shape, it screams hayi for me, and that's what I'm going to call it for now until I get confirmation from others as to its identification. So it's either a Rhaphidophora sp or Rhaphidophora hayi, but it is a glaucous leaf. It definitely climbs, so I'm sorry to be showing this to you this way, but yeah, I'll be getting it a pull really, really soon. This guy, like I said, is an Australian and New Guinea native. Based on pictures I've seen online, the leaves actually look kind of similar to that of Epipremnum pinnatum, where huge giant leaves and they're fenestrated. Next up on my list is the Rhaphidophora megaphylla. Now I got to give a disclaimer, a warning. My megaphylla is not so mega. I mean, I don't know what this plant wants. I don't. These leaves, as the name dictates, are supposed to be huge, mega, right? But the thing is, I haven't quite figured out what this plant wants, and every time it gives me a new leaf, it's always dropped one of its leaves. I know it's a native of China and Indochina. It's just, seriously, what do you want from me? So it's alive and well, and it's put out a new leaf. Hopefully it doesn't drop this old leaf. Time will tell. Yeah. Wish it well, guys. Next up on my list is one of my favorites. I keep saying everything's my favorite, but it's so hard not to have favorites, right? This, my friends, is a Rhaphidophora pertusa. This giant boy right here. The Rhaphidophora pertusa is a native of the Maldives, of India, of Sri Lanka, of Bangladesh. This plant is often mistaken for Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. I'll go ahead and provide side-by-side photos of these two. I mean, I could see why they would say that. You know, you've got the huge leaves, you've got the fenestrations that reach almost to the ends of the leaves. Mine haven't quite broken through the fenestrations yet. Yeah, they're just barely hanging on by threads. So I knew I saw somewhere where we could tell the differences of Pertusa and Tetrasperma, and I'm glad to have found it to share it with you guys. So Siddharth, the admin at International Arid Society, actually commented this in one of the comments from someone who was asking whether they had a Pertusa or a Tetrasperma. And let me go ahead and share with you exactly what he said and samples of my plants so that you could have a visual aid to accompany his comments. So the differences between the Tetrasperma and the Pertusa, which he went ahead and confirmed with Dr. Peter Boyce, are as follows. So the Tetrasperma has petioles that are shallowly grooved, whereas the Pertusa has petioles that are more deeply grooved. And I could definitely see that. I know we saw that with, the tissue culture Tetrasperma right there as well. As far as the petiolar sheath, so the little sheath that holds the leaf before it unfurls, that remains after unfurling, the petiolar sheath for the Tetrasperma extends to the base of the pulvinus, which is a little feature of the leaf, which is a little bulb at the end of the petiole, meeting the stem. Okay, anyway, I'll show it to you in a picture. The petiolar sheath for the Pertusa actually extends to 1/3 of the leaf. Oh crap. Okay, so I took it off, but it's this giant leaf right here. Its petiolar sheath that I actually just took off is from here to here. So it's a little short than 1/3. It was probably a little longer at the time when it was actually there. As far as leaf comparisons, if you have mature specimens of the Pertusa and the Tetrasperma, you can go ahead and compare leaf sizes as well. So the leaf blade for the Tetrasperma extends to 38 centimeters, whereas the leaf blade for the Pertusa, this guy, can extend up to 50 centimeters long. So definitely the Pertusa would be the bigger leaf if you're comparing mature specimens against each other. It has less of a petiolar sheath compared to the Tetrasperma, and also, and most tellingly, I think, which would be easiest for everyone, is that the grooves within the petioles are definitely deeper in the Pertusa than it is in the Tetrasperma. And that, my friends, is how you tell whether or not you have a Pertusa or a Tetrasperma. But again, I'll go ahead and put side by sides for you, and I mean visually, I could already tell which one is which, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell the differences too just by looking at them. Our next plant is finally becoming my favorite. I mean, it's given me such a hard time. This is a Rhaphidophora Beccarii. Yes, so if you see this guy right here, really beautiful leaf. Kind of reminds me of the Monstera Burley Marx's Flame in that it's got these beautiful narrow leaves that are fenestrated. I hope that by the time we put this out, this leaf would actually unfurl so we could go ahead and stick it in the video. If not, I'll go ahead and put it on Instagram so you could appreciate this new leaf with me. But when we first got it, it had maybe 3 or 4 leaves, right? Yeah. And the thing is, it dropped all its leaves. It dropped all its leaves and sent us into a panic. So we have 2 of these guys and we couldn't figure out what it wanted. The mix that we have in it right now consists of cocoa cubes, some leca, some soil, some leaf litter, but it just wasn't doing well with us until my dear husband decided to do some research on where it's from. It's from Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. But not only that, he further found out that these guys specifically grow in rocky streams. So running water was something that they needed, rocks was something that they needed, and in soft mud, sandy beds, bare rock. This information per se is coming from Kew, so the Royal Gardens at Kew. He found this information out, and ever since then, it's put out 2 new leaves. Yay! What we do is we have it in a tray, a pebble tray full of some sediment, some pumice, and definitely a lot of water. This thing is submerged a little bit, and check out those roots. Yeah, it's happy in these growing conditions, and it's been like this for a few months now. I'm quite excited to see where it goes from here. So next up on our list is something that everybody has probably seen sold as a Monstera mini, a Monstera minima, or a Monstera ginny. And all 3 of those are incorrect. The plant that I'm referring to is the Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. Before I jump into the varieties that I have, I want to go ahead and get into this really quick, okay? Just to save us any arguments. Not all tissue culture plants are bad. In fact, there are a lot of benefits to tissue culture plants. One is that it increases distribution of plants. When you make more plants, they tend to get distributed faster. When they get distributed faster, pricing tends to balance or stabilize to what it should truly cost, and more people are able to afford these plants. When there's a lot of supply, it kind of discourages people from going out into the wild and poaching. With that being said, I'm aware of a few tissue culture labs on Facebook. A good tissue culture lab actually controls their environment within the lab, controls their environment within the petri dish, everything, right? Some of these labs have had mold in their samples, in their little petri dishes. And I'm just here like, why do we have something that looks like black mold growing? You know, it's not a good thing. And this is where the TC, the tissue culture argument, probably can get a little dicey, okay? I'm not a scientist, I'm a lawyer, I'm a JD by training, but I know that when it comes to samples, I mean, even our blood work, even stuff like that, urine tests, okay, there we go. Something that I can relate to as an attorney. You've got a urine test, right? You want your urine test to be kept in the most sterile environment possible. Therefore, you put it in sterile containers, stuff like that. When you have mold in your containers along with your specimen, I would argue that that's probably not sterile, and that's probably a cause for some of the mutations that we've seen in the market. Now, when I say mutations, I'm referring specifically to the Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma mutations. There are some tetraspermas, some TC, tissue culture tetraspermas, which are horribly disfigured. Tissue culture is supposed to be an exact replica or something very, very close to the sample, right, that they used. These don't appear to be any prime examples of what a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma should look like. Now, with that being said, most Rhaphidophora tetrasperma tissue cultures that I've seen on the market are actually quite gorgeous. You're in luck today. I actually have a tissue culture Rhaphidophora tetrasperma right here. So have a good look, friends, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a side-by-side of this and the 2 other kinds that I have in my possession, in my collection. That is my Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, just the green one, but the tissue cultured variety. And I'll explain to you in a minute why, okay? A minute. before I do that, let me go ahead and introduce you to my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, also likely a tissue cultured variety, just because of how elongated it is, narrow in shape. But this, my friends, and I'll do a close-up, is a variegated Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. And now we get to the fun part. I'm going to go ask my trusty assistant to accompany me, and hold on, we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm here with my non-tissue cultured Tetrasperma. I'll go ahead and point these out to you just because the leaves are rounder in shape, as you can tell. Let me go ahead and do a side-by-side for you and model this stuff. The tissue cultured Tetrasperma, and you can only tell this with the younger leaves, okay? This is another disclaimer I'm making. You can only tell this with the younger leaves, is that they're super narrow compared to even the younger leaves of this Tetrasperma, right? It's just, these guys are rounder, these guys are definitely more narrow, as you can tell here. But also, the leaves of the tissue cultured Tetrasperma are thinner when you compare it to the leaves of the non-tissue cultured Tetrasperma, which just are more robust. They're thicker. Another sign of a tissue cultured Tetrasperma is that the nodes tend to be a lot closer. The inner nodes tend to be a lot closer. And I don't know if we could, there we go. So as you can tell here, all those lines are the nodes, and the spaces in between the lines are the inner nodes. So the inner node space of the tissue cultured Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma historically seem to be shorter. Now if you contrast that with this guy right here, yeah, check that out. So look at that. Here's one node right here where my finger is. Here we go. I don't know if you see that. Right here. Yeah, see that line? There's the node. And you've got this huge inner node space between this node and this node. So non-tissue cultured Tetraspermas tend to have larger inner node spaces than tissue cultured Tetraspermas. So when it comes down to it, these are the differentiating factors between the tissue cultured Tetrasperma and the non-tissue cultured Tetrasperma. One, they tend to have narrower leaves when they're younger, right? Compared to the rounder leaves of the Tetrasperma. Tissue cultured Tetraspermas also tend to have thinner leaves. There's no denying that part. You could only tell when you feel it though. And then third, the inner node spaces of tissue cultured Tetraspermas are really, really tiny, especially when in comparison to the inner node spaces of non-tissue cultured Tetraspermas. But if you have a tissue cultured Tetrasperma and you prefer the look of the non-tissue cultured Tetrasperma, don't fret. So what happens, according to the experts, International Aroid Society, is that as they mature, the leaves will actually start rounding out. So as you see here, this is the newest leaf of this tissue cultured Tetrasperma, and you can tell it's no longer as narrow as its younger leaves, right? So I'll go do a side-by-side of that as well. So as they mature, they tend to round out. And as they mature, these tight inner nodes down here will start, I guess, spacing out over here. And like I said, we'll go ahead and show you side-by-sides so that you could understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now let's move on to our next plant. So friends, this right here is a Rhaphidophora korthalsii. Yeah, this guy right here. The Rhaphidophora korthalsii is actually a native of Malaysia, Thailand, and the West Pacific. So these are all of the Rhaphidophoras that I have within this greenhouse. We're going to have to go outside to look at the others. So come on, let's go. This, my friends, is the Rhaphidophora Australasica. I believe it's what it's called. So if you get a closer look at that, there you go. This guy is actually found in New Guinea and, as you guessed by the name, in Australia. And supposedly, okay, because I don't know if there's any truth to this, but supposedly A defining characteristic of the Rhaphidophora Australasica is that its flowers smell like rotting vegetation. Yes, I'm overwhelmed as well. But, you know, if the Amorphophilus actually smells like rotting corpse, I guess this is a step up, right? Yeah. Let's go check out the others. So the next Rhaphidophora that's on our list is the one that's actually endemic to the Philippines. I believe to all parts of the Philippines, so Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. If that's incorrect, I'll go ahead and correct it at the bottom of the screen, but I'm almost positive I'm right. And this, my friends, is Rhaphidophora elmerii. And as you can see, this specimen that we have has been with us for a while now and has outgrown his pole. If you look down here really quickly, oh yeah, see? So he outgrew his, what is this, 4-foot pole, and has decided to climb up further. And this is why we make these giant 10-foot poles, is just so that these guys have a place to climb up on. And I'll go ahead and insert some prettier shots because I understand that we're a little bit against the light right now, but not much we can do about that. So I'll go ahead and insert some prettier shots of it so you can actually appreciate how nice it is. Okay, and if you guys back away further, this, my friends, is another Philippine native. And actually it's the same plant, just a different variety of it, a different form of it. This, my friends, is the Rhaphidophora elmerii narrow form. And as you can tell, it's a lot more narrow than the juvenile leaves of the elmerii that we have here. We'll go ahead and include some of the shots of the older leaves for comparison. But once this guy unfurls this new leaf, we're going to go ahead and put him on this pole so that they could commingle, and just going to let them go wild, see what happens. And that, my friends, is our Rhaphidophora collection episode. If you enjoyed today's content, feel free to give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any future content. If you have any questions about today's content, feel free to leave me a comment down in the description box as well. I will have written guides on my Facebook. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes. And if it's late at night and you just want to scroll and look at pretty pictures, check me out on Instagram as well. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes. Okay guys, until next time, sa uulitin, keep your nodes classy and tasteful. Bye.